Good morning, Goshen College. Good morning. My name is Suzanne East. I'm a professor of education, and I also currently serve as the core curriculum director. That's a position that rotates among teaching faculty, and whoever is in that role also has the privilege of working with Convocation. Last week on Wednesday, we had a chapel, which is held by campus ministries and has more of a spiritual formation focus. This week is Convocation, which doesn't necessarily have that religious emphasis all of the time. The word convocation comes from the Latin root convocare, meaning to call together. And I put that out there not to try to be super academic, but for me, that points toward the why of Convocation. It's a time when we're called together as a campus community to hear and respond to the same issue, to hear from one another in various parts of campus. This semester, one of our intentions with our programming is to center student voices and experiences a little bit more. There are many of you on campus who are doing some really significant things, and I appreciate it when we can use this time of coming together to lift up your work and celebrate it. So just a quick look ahead at some of the things we have programmed for the spring semester that feature your experiences. In 2 weeks, COM students will share some of their film projects, and then the week after, Convocation will be led by our Black Student Union and Vessel of Honor. We will celebrate March Madness with student athletes, and then we'll hear reflections from the Senegal SST unit, which I'm told also includes a special guest Senegalese hip-hop artist who's going to be here for that. In April, we'll hear from several of our music ensembles as they prepare for their Earth Tones concert, and we often wrap up the year with stories and reflections from graduating seniors. So just a little look ahead at some of the ways we want to use this space to bring student work and student voices forward and celebrate that together. So today is also a convocation where we center student voices. Every year in the fall, in Core 100, students are asked to tell a story to their class about themselves. Some of your stories, and I say your because most of you have done this, some of your stories are lighthearted and some are really heartbreaking. Some of your stories celebrate significant accomplishments and others reflect on simple delights. The power of the assignment is not so much in that single stellar story, but in the tapestry of bringing together all of our varied life experiences and perspectives. And so you all offer that into your class space when you tell that story. At the end of the semester, professors suggest first-year students from their classes to repeat their story here in Convo, and I am always impressed by the bravery of first-year students who say yes to that invitation when it comes their way. Being up here on the stage in front of you all is a vulnerable space, especially when you're revealing something about yourself. So I ask that today you receive the stories being brought to you as a gift, as a reminder that each one of us has a world of experiences informing how we go about our days. And one of the best things we can do to build community is simply to be curious about one another's stories. And I'm especially appreciative of all of the teams and friends and colleagues who are packing the front rows as encouragement to our 5 storytellers today. So thank you so much for that. We have 5 speakers, and stories are between 4 and 6 minutes, so about 25 minutes of storytelling. And then after our 5th speaker, please hold your seats for just one final announcement and dismissal. With that, I will turn it over to Kate Boddicker.
So my name is Kate Boddicker, and I'm a double major in writing and film. So just a little bit of preface before I get started with my story. I am going to be talking a little bit graphically about an injury I went through, especially of the joints, so if that's like an issue for you, just wanted to let you know. And also, this was kind of a traumatic event, but I've moved on from it and can laugh, so I invite all of you to laugh along with me. So to begin with, I played varsity soccer for 4 years in high school, and things had always gone well. Elementary, middle school, I'd been fine. But then I actually dislocated my kneecap the winter off season before my freshman year, which was not a very fun experience. It took a lot of work to get back to where I was happy with my abilities again and feeling comfortable and no longer like I was hurt all the time. However, the second time it happened is actually what I'm going to be focusing on, sort of the more important one. It was actually almost exactly 2 years to the day after the first one had happened, and I was quite literally in the exact same place. Now, when I say that, I feel like it comes across as I'm exaggerating, but if you were to look at pictures of what happened, there were not more than feet apart from where I was. I was by myself. There was not even anyone near me. I was literally trying to do the easiest trick ever, and all of a sudden I was laying on the ground, my knee out of place, and my ankle bent all crazy under me. And honestly, my first thought is that I was just annoyed. I was like, we've moved past this, everything was fine. I really was not wanting to go through this again, and I wasn't even so much in pain, because your body goes into shock, because it's you're really hurt, so you need to remain calm so you don't start freaking out. So yeah, I wasn't really even in that much pain, even though for some context, my knee was about here, so not ideal. But again, I was just more annoyed than I was anything else. My coaches were freaking out. My head coach had no idea what to do. One of my assistant coaches was running around asking for people to call 911. I was like, no, it's fine. The last time this happened, we're good. And then my other assistant coach, I was asking to take a picture of it, because the first time it happened, he was also there. And he asked me if I wanted it. I was like, no, that's insanity. What are you talking about? And then this time I was like, well, if I have to go through this again, I'm at least going to get a gruesome photo out of it. And he wouldn't take the picture. So I would have showed you an upsetting picture of my knee out of joint, but I don't have it. So anyway, my head coach is the one that it all falls down to, because the last time it happened, my dad, who has some athletic training history, just came down from the other gym. My brother was playing basketball. He just walked over, put it back, everything was fine. But this time, him and my entire family were gone at a basketball game about an hour away, so that was not so much an option. So what ended up happening is my head coach, which he's the real hero of this story, I felt so bad for him, had to call my dad on speakerphone, and I'm just laying on the ground, being you have to, you can't make it any worse, but I can't move, right? Because that's what your joints do, they let you move and bend, so you're just sort of laying there, and my ankle hurts really bad, and I'm you just have to you have to fix it. So he calls my dad, and my dad is on speakerphone talking him through how to relocate a kneecap, and he's freaking out, and I'm just so pissed off. I'm you have to fix it, because this is awful, and you're the only one that can. So he's the real hero of this story. Shout out to him. Eventually, it got back in, everything was fine, and they just sort of put me off to the side, because they couldn't just end soccer, because there was people that don't have rides, and they just kind of kept going. I was sitting off against the bleachers with an ice pack and some ibuprofen and just watching other people continue on. And then again, my poor coach had to physically carry me back to my home, because it's not I could drive and my family wasn't there. So he just sort of carried me into my house and then put me on my couch and then was just good luck. So I just kind of laid there until my parents came back and they helped me do more stuff. But after that, my knee started to swell, which, that was old news. That happened the last time. That's what happens when your ligaments get all messed up. The tissue is, trying to protect itself. So my knee got really swollen. However, my ankle also got swollen in a really weird place. It was sort of, up here, which is not normal if you've just, sprained your ankle or even if I had broken it. So we were really confused what was going on. But I was, walking in, and I wasn't in that much pain. It was fine. I didn't even have crutches. I was just, wrapping my knee. Because that's what I had done the last time. But my mom was a little bit concerned. She also has some medical background. She's a physical therapist. So she was your ankle is doing a really weird thing. I don't know what's up with that. Why is that happening? So we went to our actual trainer at the high school, and he looked at it and he was no, I think it's fine. We're all good. You maybe just sprained it, or it might be just some swelling from your knee that's in a weird place. So we were okay. But I had to go to the orthopedic doctor anyway, because they had to make sure I didn't tear any ligaments or anything, and that I didn't need surgery. So when we got there, my mom was hey, can you do x-rays of her ankle also? Because you're doing knee x-rays anyway, and like I'm just a little confused like why this is happening. So they were like, yeah, sure, whatever. So they take me back to do the x-rays. They do the knee x-rays, and then they just take me back to the room. And my mom, when I come back, is like, where are the ankle x-rays? You said you were going to do them. Why did you not? So they were like, fine, whatever, and sent me back. They were like, it's fine. Sent me back. I have to do more x-rays in that weird little room, and then I have to come all the way back to the doctor's office again. And then once they pull up the x-rays on the board, immediately the doctor looks at me and is like, oh, well, your ankle's broken. So I've been walking on it for like 2 weeks, because it like didn't hurt that bad. And technically it was like the bottom of one of my leg bones, but it's an ankle area. So they give me crutches, give me a boot, and now my knee is wrapped, and I'm in a boot, and I have crutches, so I do look a little bit crazy. But eventually, I go to a specialist, because this has happened twice now, gotta make sure there's no structural problems, and I actually recovered like mostly fine. However, after the second one, I did gain something very exciting from this experience, and that is now that I have like old woman powers. Like I never understood when people were like, oh, my joints are aching, the weather's gonna change. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, like what does that even mean? And now it like literally, the day before, I'll be like, why does my knee hurt so bad? And then I'll wake up and it's snowing. And I'm like, what is happening? So I learned a lot about resilience and all that, but the most exciting takeaway is definitely now that I have the secret superpowers of an older woman.
Hello, my name is Leslie Sanchez. I'm from Illinois. So, elementary school, probably the easiest years of our lives. Not for me. I was a really awkward, shy kid, so I didn't like trying anything new. And because I didn't like trying new things, I never won an award. Never won a trophy, a medal, certificate, none of it. I was the coach's daughter, and I didn't get any benefit. And most kids know that if you're the coach's kid, most people think you get benefits. I didn't. So, because I was really shy, at the time, I felt like I didn't really fit in with other kids, but I never stood out either. I was stuck in between feeling really ordinary. So, I decided, right then and there, I was just never gonna try. In my mind, I thought that if I just never attempted anything, I would never fail. And if I never failed, I would never feel disappointed. Well, all of that changed some random Wednesday afternoon because my teacher came in talking about some short story contest in 4th grade. Basically, all the kids of every grade were to write a short story, and we'd turn it in, and they'd take it, the organization would take it and turn it into a short mini play, and they'd only pick their favorites. So I wasn't gonna do it until 2 girls came up to me during snack time asking me to join their group. And if you're a shy kid, you know that you never say no. It's like a rule. I don't know why it is, but it is. So we sat down in snack time. It was 20 minutes every day we would have to write the short story. And for the first week, nobody cared. We all procrastinated. So we were just talking about lunchtime snacks and stuff. So it didn't really matter. Then the second week came, and then we started caring. So we were running out of time, and Annie was asking me, which was one of the girls, what my idea was, because she said she knew I had an idea. I don't know why she knew, but I did have an idea. When you're a shy kid, you think a lot because you don't talk. So I did have a lot of ideas, but I didn't want to share them because I didn't think they were good enough. The third week came by, and that was when it was complete silence. No one was saying anything. It was really awkward. And as a shy kid, you would think that I'd like silence, but it was actually scarier than no one talking because it felt like everyone was watching me. So by the 4th week, I shared my ideas. I told them about this idea I had of a zebra who wanted to join the circus, but he didn't think he was good enough because there were lions and elephants that were way better than him. He could dance and sing, and he had a red suit and golden shoes. There were shrink rays and squirrels. It was a weird story, but it was my idea, and I turned it in, I told them, and the girls are so excited that we started writing it immediately. So by the end of the week, we turned it in, and we waited. For the first week, we heard nothing. The second week, nothing. And the third week, nothing. So I realized we probably lost. and I felt like it was all my fault. So before the week of the assembly, of all the short plays, the girls came up to me because they could tell I was sad, and they laughed about it. They said that it would be so boring to win all the time, that it's okay to lose, and they liked my idea. And they were right, it would be really boring if we won all the time. So we went to the assembly, and I had a smile on my face, and I was ready for it. I was ready to watch all the plays without wanting to cry. And while I was sitting there, I saw that they had a character on stage. They were setting up the play, and it was my character. It was a zebra with a red suit and golden shoes, and I felt so proud of myself for some reason. The girls all looked at each other, we all looked at each other, and we were squealing, slapping each other like kids do. And I turn around and I hear screaming, like yelling my name, and I see it's my mom and dad with the big camera pointed right at me. So by the end of it, I realized one thing. Before, when I said I wasn't trying anything new because I was avoiding failure, I realized I wasn't. I wasn't avoiding failure. I was admitting to it before I ever tried. And I realized I do have a mind and words and thoughts that are worth sharing, and so do all of you. You all have amazing minds that are worth, and words that are worth listening to. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lance. I study history. So when I was at elementary school and middle school, I was overall I was a good student. I was high energy in class. I went to class. I'm not saying I was Mr. Smartbox, teacher's pet or anything, but I did my homework and I paid attention. But because I was so high energy all the time, it backfired a lot on me. I would take advantage of every opportunity that I could to say something in class, talk to a friend, go sharpen my pencil to, oh, look at my new shoes, you know what I'm saying? So freshman year, I had a Spanish teacher. Her name was Mrs. Orban, and she was the sweetest little old lady. She was born in Mexico, and she taught their elementary school for most of her life. She taught students that were learning English in Mexico, and now she's teaching Spanish students in America, or English students in America. It's probably not the best combination for immature freshman students to have a teacher with a language barrier. So on top of that, my brother had her 2 years prior, and he wasn't the same academic weapon that I am. He wasn't in class like me. So she didn't like him. She already had a negative view of my brother, so she didn't like me. On top of all of this, the group of guys in this class was crazy. This was one of the funniest classes. I already knew off the rip, there's gonna be people making jokes in this class. It's gonna be bad. So when we would do group speaking, everything, like I said, was harmless. We would do the group, we would all do voices in Spanish. We would all make funny names for our characters when we did the presentations. And every day, we goofed off, but it was never out of line. Every day, my classmates would goof off and make jokes, and eventually it started to get worse. I was bad too. I wasn't the worst kid in class. We started to make worse of the situation, and one day, my parents finally got emailed by the teacher. The next day, I come to class silent. In my household, if I get in trouble at school, the punishment for me is gonna be a lot worse when I get home. So I'm not gonna be messing up in class if I know I'm gonna get in trouble. So I come to class silent, and my friends are all like, Lance, what's going on? They know it's not the same when I come to class and I'm quiet, right? So everyone's trying to egg me on because they know the situation, and now they think it's funny because I'm the one that got in trouble and not them. So of course, things get out of line, the class starts joking, making jokes, and Drayden gets up and says something in the back of class. And I'm already sitting in the front because I obviously got moved there at the beginning of the year. It wasn't my fault. And so the teacher hears me smirk at somebody that made a joke. I promise you, I let out a little, and she instantly gets up and she walks over, and I sit down and start emailing my parents and the dean. I'm like, great, here we go. 2 days in a row, I gotta deal with this. I wasn't messing up this day, I promised. I'm like, shoot. So the dean comes and escorts me out of class, and everyone's laughing. Everyone thinks it's funny. Oh, and I don't think it's funny. My parents don't think it's funny. We're in the office, and they eventually say, I don't think this class is the best for you. I think we need to make a change and get you out of this class. And looking back at it, I think it's kind of funny to me because, like I said, I was a good student. go crazy in this class. I got a 95 in the class. I was in class every single day. And when I went to my new class, my other teachers couldn't understand why I was kicked out of my last class. The funniest part to me is the note that she wrote in my report card. She wrote, "Pleasure to have in class," which I took as kind of like a slight diss, like, "Oh yeah, pleasure to have in class, like, I'll see you next year," like whatever. But I wasn't sure how to take it. Either way, I took it personally, right, of course. So in my new class, I gotta be better. I understand how to control myself. I'm still gonna be the same guy. I'm still gonna be high energy. I can't change that. And I'm still gonna talk to my friends. This class, again, was loaded. I'm able to have fun in this class. I make good friends with the teacher. The teacher I ended up having the next year as well, and is to this day one of my favorite teachers I've ever had. Ended up getting an A in that class, and from that day on, I was so much better in class. I was determined to set a better example for the kids in my class and the people around me, and make a better impression on my peers. Thank you, guys.
Hi, I'm Gracie Garcia, and I'm on the women's soccer team. All right, so I grew up a really shy kid. When I was around strangers, I showed no emotion at all. I only showed emotion when I was with my family. These are my two brothers. My oldest brother is Taylor. My younger one is Reed, but we weren't very close just because of the age gap, but we did love each other. I also played softball was my first sport, and this specific game was actually really impacted my life. So my whole family would always come to all of my games, my grandmas, my aunts, my uncles, my brothers, everyone. And this specific game, I made the game-winning catch, and I would look over at my family, and everyone was there except my uncle, and my uncle was very supportive of me, so that was a little bit confusing. But we all went our separate ways and went home. The next day, I go to school, super happy, more outgoing than normal, and all the athletes kind of know that when you make it, you win a big game, the next day you just feel good at school. So that's kind of how I felt. I was having a great day. I went to daycare. My parents picked me up at 6:30 every single day. But it hit 7:30, and I thought that was kind of weird. They were never late. So then my daycare provider told me to get in the car, and we were actually going to go to Texas Roadhouse. So I was like, this day is just getting better and better. Eat at Texas Roadhouse. Then my brother, Taylor, actually came to pick me up. And I never have been in his car before, so I thought it was really weird. Get in his car, he stays silent the entire time. Then we get onto the freeway, and I was like, that's not the way home, this is weird. And I was thinking in my head that we were going to Disneyland or something, I don't know. I thought I was gonna get a better of a day. And all I remember was turning into my grandma's court, and there's just sirens everywhere. And I found out that my uncle had passed away the day before that. It was really hard. My family was struggling, but I went to school the next day as a shy kid and bottled everything. I didn't tell my best friends. I was just struggling inside. And then I later find out that my uncle actually committed suicide. My whole family just really didn't tell me that, and it kind of built kind of a trust issues kind of thing for me at the time. I understand it now, why they did it to protect me, but at the time I was struggling. And my family went to therapy. I didn't. I bottled all of my emotions. I wish I could talk about it more. But I went about life, and a year later, probably, it was about a year, my oldest brother, Taylor, went to college, and then my other brother, Reed, actually got sent to jail. But it was just an accident. It wasn't a big deal. And all I wanted was to see my brother, Reed, for my birthday. I was alone at this point at the house, so I really I don't know. All I wanted was to just see my brothers again. It made me realize that I wish I was closer with them while I had them at my house. So I went to jail and visited my brother, and it healed my heart. It really healed me a little bit while I was talking to him. But then later in the conversation, he actually told me to never come back. So that re-shattered me a little bit. And went through life, little bit. Fast forward a few years, I was just struggling. I go to high school, my freshman year, at a public school, and I ended up dropping out, and I don't know, I was just struggling, I couldn't do it anymore. So I dropped out of high school, and kind of turned to like a bad kid. I stopped playing sports, and I felt like I was just like a disappointing child in a way, and I was just struggling. Then about 8 months later, I looked at my parents, and I just told them how I wanted to flip my life around. I couldn't live like that anymore, and I said I wanted to go back to school. They said if I went back to school, I had to go to a private school. So they sent me to a private school, and my whole life changed. I told myself I'd be myself, I'd be more outgoing, I'd express my emotions, I'd just change and be like my true authentic self. And then about a month into that next school year, I woke up not breathing, and I got really sick. I was really ill, I was in the hospital, and I lost a lot of weight. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. And this incident really changed me, I feel like. It still impacts my life day to day, even today. And it was a struggle for me. I felt like I was fighting for my life, and it made me realize, I'm grateful that it happened now. It made me realize that I wanted to keep going and keep fighting. But once I healed, it took me many months to finally heal. Then I went back to my private school, and I finally got my life together. I was happy again. I started playing sports. This was my first soccer tournament back. We actually won it. And then I started playing softball again. Everything felt like normal. And the whole moral of this story is whatever happens in your life, your life path is based off of your mindset. Thank you. Do you want to hold it?
My name is Jill Yoder, and I'm an environmental science major. So I'm going to talk about birds, and to tell this story, I need to start pretty far back, because birds have really always been important to me throughout my entire life. I grew up surrounded by a family with an appreciation for nature, and in particular, a love of birds. Where I lived as a kid, we had bird feeders right outside the kitchen window. There was this big glass door that looked out on the backyard at the bird feeders, and I loved to sit right next to it and watch the birds out there. And this was something I had enjoyed doing ever since I was a little kid. In fact, the first word that I learned to say was bird, and that was from watching those bird feeders. So a love of birds was something that I've really always had, but I didn't really realize it until a bit later. I was probably around 6 or 7 years old, and I guess I decided I wanted to do some photography. I don't really know, but for whatever reason, I had made a pretend camera out of a cereal box, and I took this creation to the backyard to take some pictures. So one of those pictures was of some birds at the feeder, and then I suddenly wondered, what kind of birds are they? So I went back inside where we had this poster with some common backyard birds hanging next to the back door, and I looked at it and I found my bird. It was a house sparrow. Looking back, I find this funny because house sparrows are really common, they're an invasive species, and are usually considered a nuisance. But at that moment, I considered them exciting. I thought it was so cool that I now knew what this bird was, and I wanted to see how many others I could find. So I spent the rest of the day identifying birds, and then the next day, and the next week, and the next year, and here I am 10 years later, and I'm still birding. But back to 7-year-old me. I was reading field guides, and now I had this newfound interest in memorizing species, what they look like, what they sound like, where they're found, and I was noticing them around me so much more than I had before. There were tree swallows flying over my backyard, great egrets nesting on the lake at the park, and meadowlarks on fences next to fields. I started keeping a list of all the species I had seen, and today that number is over 250. There was so much to see all around me, and it made me so happy. Now, skip ahead a bit to the pandemic, because what else? During online school, I wasn't in contact with friends very much, and learning online was frustrating and stressful, and mentally I was not in a very good place. And around this time, my dad started going out to the back porch to watch birds. Now, this is a different house than where we lived when I was younger, but we still have bird feeders in the backyard, and there's also a little bit of forest, so habitat for birds. And so my dad would go sit on the back porch, and for around an hour each day, he would keep a checklist of all the birds that he saw. And soon I started doing the same thing. When I had a break in my school day, I'd go outside, sit down for a while, and just watch. And it was something that I looked forward to doing every day, and for a little while I could just put aside the things that were making me anxious and just watch the birds. So it really helped me through a difficult time. So now I look back on how birds have impacted my life. They've increased my appreciation for nature, ecology, just seeing how so many things in the world are connected. And birding has made me more observant and aware of what's around me. And perhaps most importantly, birds bring me joy. The world isn't a beautiful place all of the time, but often it is. And if I think of birds as little pieces of joy that are flying all around me, then I think that's really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much to each of our 5 storytellers. Like I said at the beginning, being up here is a really vulnerable thing, and one of the worst feelings in the world is when you put yourself out there and nobody says anything. So I would love it if when we dismiss, y'all just swarm our storytellers with positive feedback and asking them follow-up questions. Before we go, can we applaud all 5 of them one more time? Thanks so much, and have a good day.